Went out for football in the ninth grade, never played tackle football before. My coach gave a talk I'll never forget, which is the title of this talk that we're doing.
Right.
And he gives us our pads and he says, you got your pads today. If you don't want to play, turn them in, no harm, no foul. If you come back tomorrow, I need you to stay till the end of the season because quitters never win and winners never quit. He said, if you quit my football team, you might quit school, get married, quit your spouse, have kids, quit your kids. Because once you quit the first time, it's easier to quit the next time. So I developed the mindset that I would never quit. Now, the other thing is, again, I talk about quitters never win and winners never quit. You know, there's a difference between quitting and making an assessment and say, you know what, I can do this, but I choose not to.
Welcome to Onward Live, a live stream focused on encouraging you to create a life you love living now. Let's go beyond success to significance. Being clear on our why is crucial. It requires doing the inner work, finding ourselves, getting to know ourselves, embracing our inner child, shedding social conditioning, and letting go of perfect. We know obstacles make us stronger. We can dream big and take action. Believe you can, and you're halfway there. I invite you to tune in every week and engage with me and my inspiring guests. Invite your friends. Let's make time for what matters most in our lives. Let's move onward together. Carl, welcome to the Onward podcast.
Thank you for having me, Emily. It's a pleasure to be here.
I'm excited. I love your background with your book title in there and everything, and we're going to be talking about that. So you're a leadership innovation strategist, and you help leaders and organizations go from being mediocre to maximizing their potential. And I'd love to learn a little bit more about you and how you do that. And you're also a Naval Academy graduate, class of 76. You served in the Marine Corps for 5.5 years as a pilot. And then you started working in several different roles in manufacturing with lots of different companies. So tell us a little bit more about yourself as we get into the conversation.
Okay, great. I always start with the ground, the beginning. I was blessed to have two supportive parents. My mother was an encourager. I never heard her say a bad word about anybody, and she was kind of a community listener, consultant, unofficially. And then my dad's a World War II Marine, a great work ethic, had a couple of different jobs at the same time, very disciplined. So from those two individuals, that was kind of the foundation of me and my leadership and things like that. I grew up and wanted to be a professional baseball player or football player. And I can remember having a conversation in the fifth with some of my friends, debating about whether or not I had to go to college in order to do that. So we called in the only male teacher in the whole elementary school, Mr. Downing, and asked him that question. And he says, yes, you probably need to go to college if you're going to play sports. So we said, okay. So that was the first inclination that I even thought about going to college. My dad moved me from Washington, D.C., where everybody looked like me, to Spotsylvania, Virginia, during the same time period as the movie Remember the Titans. My experiences were very similar. So I go into an environment that not only was different, but those individuals there did not want me to be there. But I learned a lot of valuable lessons through that adversity. I learned that everybody wants the same thing, no matter what color you are, no matter what your nationality is, no matter what your economic status is. Everybody wants the same thing. They want to be loved, they want to be respected, and they want to be successful. So I learned that at a very young age. Went out for football in the ninth grade, never played tackle football before. My coach gave a talk I'll never forget, which is the title of this talk that we're doing.
Right.
And he gives us our pads and he says, you got your pads today. If you don't want to play, turn them in, no harm, no foul. If you come back tomorrow, I need you to stay till the end of the season because quitters never win and winners never quit. He said, if you quit my football team, you might quit school, get married, quit your spouse, have kids, quit your kids. Because once you quit the first time, it's easier to quit the next time. So I developed the mindset that I would never quit. Struggled through that first year, fast forward, my senior year, I'm the most valuable player of the team. And probably right after the football season, myself and two other guys on the team get called to the office. We don't know why we're getting called to the office. And in walks this guy, 6'2", blue suit, white shirt, blue tie, white cover, says, I'm from the Naval Academy and I want to recruit you to play football. I didn't know what the Naval Academy was, and it was only 90 miles up the road, primarily because there weren't a whole lot of people that looked like me going to the Naval Academy.
Right.
Graduated from high school in 1971. Vietnam War was still going on. So my classmates walked out. They wouldn't even listen. They said, I'm not going to Vietnam. I listened because my dad always told me never turn down an opportunity that you haven't been offered. So I listened. Went home and talked it over with my dad. He said, it's a pretty good opportunity, Carl. So I said, okay, I'm going for it. I applied, did not get in initially because I was not academically competitive. My GPA score and my SAT scores were not competitive. So the Naval Academy Foundation sent me to a prep school in Harlingen, Texas, the southern tip of Texas, called Marine Military Academy. I learned to study for the first time, reapplied, got accepted, entered the academy, had several leadership positions, played football, graduated in '76, decided to go into the Marine Corps, decided to become a pilot in the Marine Corps, did 2 6-month Mediterranean deployments and 1 3-month Caribbean deployment, decided to get out of the Marine Corps, and I went to work for Procter & Gamble in Albany, Georgia, Southwest Georgia. That was a very unique opportunity for me because there were so many Vietnam veterans. 20% of the management force at Procter & Gamble at that point in time were military veterans. So it was kind of a good way to enter the corporate world, but having some people that I could lean on that had been there before. The other thing that was pretty unique about that opportunity, it was a manufacturing plant that had just been started. I got there in '81 and '71. The leadership said they wanted to start have the same multicultural mix as the community. And that was pretty unique in that point in time. So when I got there in '81, 40% of the technicians were African-American and 20% of the managers were African-American and 20% of the managers were women, unheard of in Southwest Georgia during that time period. So I learned a lot about how do you really lead in a diverse environment. And we had the best results in the companies, in all the plants that we were in. So it was kind of like a think tank or a new wave way of doing business. That was a great foundation for leadership. 5 years there, Cincinnati for 2 years, corporate headquarters, left and went to Frito Lay for 3 years. I go from a paternalistic organization to an organization that's upper route, Frito. Very bad culture. After 3 years, I said, you know what? This is not what I want, but I learned a lot. Went to a company called Colgate Palmolive, Hills Pet Nutrition in Topeka, Kansas. Union facility there, first time I'd ever been exposed to a union facility. My boss was a plant manager, former plant manager of P&G and vice president of Frito. So he wanted to mold the two cultures. So that's what we did then. We took a traditional union facility in Topeka, Kansas, and turned it into a high-performing work system. We had the best results in the system there at that organization also. I'm constantly moving west. Parents are getting older. I wanted to live somewhere between where my parents were living in Virginia and where my wife is from in Florida. So I took a position as the vice president of manufacturing for Dunlop Slazenger making golf balls. After about a year, my boss and I agreed and we decided to part ways. I'm in the right location, no job. I said, what am I going to do? Do I really want to work for somebody else or do I want to work for myself? And I'd always kind of had that entrepreneurial spirit like my dad. So I said, you know what? I'm going to step out on faith and use my Rolodex at the time and say, who do I know and who could get me work? So that's what I did and started getting work.
That's amazing. Yeah. I guess you did back then it was the Rolodex. I don't think there was LinkedIn and all that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so that was the unique thing. And then the other thing that kind of happened along the way was while I was in Topeka, Kansas, with Colgate Palmolive, I went to a program called the Looking Glass Experience in Greensboro, North Carolina, and got certified in that. So that gave me some coaching experience, as well as it allowed me to work with some high-powered executives, and I really understood what the issues were and how to address them.
Yeah, I mean, gosh, I can see that all that experience that you've had enables you to be a great coach and consultant now. That's awesome, and helping organizations. I'm curious, what was it about you that led to you listening to your parents? A lot of kids, a lot of teenagers and stuff, they're like, whatever my dad says or mom, I'm doing the opposite. So you keep saying, I listened. You listen to your coach, you listen to your teacher, you listen to your parents. Why?
Well, one was I was taught at a very young age to pay attention or there are going to be consequences. Okay. So that probably started it, right? So then what I developed was I said, you know what? I at least have to act like I'm listening.
Okay.
But I actually listened. And the way I looked at it was, okay, I'm going to get this information and I'm not going to be disrespectful. And if I can use it, I'm going to use it. If I can not use it and not get caught, then, that's kind of, then that's what I'm going to do. It amazes me now. And I got the same issue with my kids. And I tell them something. And I mean, they have a high-powered coach that they've had the opportunity to live with for many years, and they don't take advantage of it. I don't get that.
Yeah. My kids too. Sometimes I'm like, yeah, it's so interesting. Someone else will tell them the same thing and they'll be like, oh, so-and-so said, well, didn't I tell you that? I guess it doesn't matter. I think all parents experience that. Yeah. And then the other thing is, how you've talked about how you learned from all of your experiences, and some of them weren't the best, like at Frito Lay, or when you and your boss decided to agree to disagree, they weren't the best situation, but you looked for what's the gift and the opportunity here, and how can I move forward?
Exactly.
How'd you learn that?
I don't know. I guess I learned at some point in time that it was more valuable to listen as opposed to trying it out myself and being unsuccessful,
Yeah.
I mean, and as I've gotten older, I've employed that more, and it's actually in my book. But my philosophy is, why am I going to beat my head against the wall if somebody's telling me that you'll get a bloody head if you beat your head against the wall? I don't need to try it. I'll take that wisdom and try something else.
So why'd you go to the Naval Academy? You knew you'd be beating your head against the wall.
Well, that was interesting. I had no idea that I was going into the military. I thought about it, but I didn't. My dad never talked about being in the Marine Corps until I got to the Naval Academy. But when I heard about the opportunity and what the opportunity presented, then I said, I'm always, even before the Pareto principle, even before I understood what the Pareto principle was, I always looked at data and says, okay, what's the best choice? And I said, of all my opportunities, and I wanted to play football and I wanted to go for free. That was the only place that offered me that, simplistically. And then the education was, unparalleled if you do the analysis and the assessment of it. So that's what kind of got me there.
That's kind of the same with me. I mean, I did grow up in Northern Virginia, where a lot of my friends had parents that were in the military or worked for the government, but I was oblivious to all of that. I just didn't really pay attention to it. My parents weren't in the military. My dad couldn't serve because he had a knee injury. And I got recruited to play basketball. So I got recruited by West Point, and I went up there, and it was cold and rainy and everyone was wearing gray. I'm like, I don't know about this. And then I went to the Naval Academy. It happened to be one of those beautiful weekends, and the sailboats are out there. And I just thought, this is really nice. And it's closer to where I live. And I like the basketball team. And I thought, well, if I get hurt, I'm still going to get an education, right? My education is first, not basketball or football for you. And so I went there, and then I must have liked something about it. I worked for the Navy for 34 years after that. So, yeah. So what are some of why is it important to have a workforce that is representative of the community? You talked about that with that company in Georgia that you worked for, and how that was kind of unusual at that time. And that's still a topic that we're talking about these days. So why is that so important?
Exactly. I had an opportunity to experience the value of it. And when I think about it, it's a lot of different ways that it's applicable in other environments that we don't think about. Just think about the military. Okay, let's do it this way. Think about, what is the most elite fighting force in the world? What would you consider that to be?
Oh, it would be SEALs or the Green Berets,
Exactly.
those kinds of.
So let's take the Navy SEALs.
The
Navy SEALs have their unit, their smallest unit, okay, is very diverse. Everybody's got different skills. They know what the mission is, but they've all got different skills. And they don't care when they're on mission if you grow your hair long or not. They don't care if you wear your hair backwards or not. All they care about is, are you competent? Are you the best at what you do? Are you part of the team? And are you going to cover my back? That's what they care about. Now, the other thing that I found out about the SEALs later on in life was this. I was talking to a guy that was in the SEALs. I actually had a guy that went to Marine Military Academy with me, as well as graduated from me, that retired as a SEAL, but I didn't get it from him. I got it from somebody else. And this is what he told me. He said, everybody that he knows of that's a Navy SEAL has been marginalized and or bullied and or been through some very, very tough times. We're talking things like child molestation. We're talking abusive parents. We're talking alcoholic parents, right? So in order to get through the SEALs, you have to have a chip on your shoulder. When you get there, you have to know that you can't hurt me. So if I'm gonna create a crackpot team, I'll get a diverse team that's marginalized, give them a mission, give them the tools, and they will beat any team you can think of, any team you put together.
I love that. I love that. Is this something that you coach in
Oh yeah.
with what you're doing
Yeah,
every day?
and it's not. And when you think about the military, when I went to the Naval Academy, the first or second day, the first thing you did, I don't know if it was the same thing with you, you identify yourself with your company mates, the 30 or 40 plebes that come in. You talk about yourself, what you like to do, where you're from, what sports you play, You got people that's one of the good things about the Naval Academy. You got to have people from all across the country, city, Black, white, Latino, football, soccer, so each company is a melting pot.
Yeah.
So you learn about differences, dialects, and all kinds of stuff. So, that's one of the values of the Naval Academy.
Right. And even more so now, because when you went there, how many African Americans were in your class?
We had about 76 that came into my class. We graduated about 42. In my company I think we came in with 36 plebes. I was the only Black plebe in my company. There were no Black third class, second class, or first class. So I was only Black in my company. And then every year, about 2 African Americans came in. So that was kind of the environment that I came in.
Yeah. And so your dad moving you from DC, where everyone looked like you, to Spotsylvania, where that wasn't the case, gave you the opportunity to experience that. So when you went to the Naval Academy, it wasn't the first time you had experienced being in that situation.
Exactly. I had already developed a mindset that, it's not what you call me, it's what I answer to. And if you have a problem, it's not my problem. And I'm not going to spend my time on your problem.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be very strategic on what I say and what I do. I'm not jumping at everything you say, I'm going to pick and choose my battles. So I'd already developed some coping mechanisms.
Yeah. How did your parents help you, or who helped you when you moved to Spotsylvania with that? Because I don't even know if you were expecting to be in that situation, or if you had any clue once you moved from DC.
No, I didn't. When I moved there was still an all Black school, but there was a school that had been voluntarily integrated about 2 or 3 years before. So that's the school that my parents had me go to, right? So one of the things that really helped was the fact that I became part of the sports team. And I say that the third most influential person in my life was Coach Sparks, who's my football coach and baseball coach. So Coach Sparks was a lot like Vince Lombardi. I don't know if you know who Vince Lombardi was. He's a legendary coach. And matter of fact, he's the one that I know of, maybe wasn't original, but kind of originally coined the term quitters never win and winners never quit.
Got it.
So about 5 years ago, about five to 10 years ago, Coach Sparks, who is still living, he's about 78 years old, right? He sent me the original book. He bought a book. He got a book that was the story of Vince Lombardi, and he had written on it and everything like that. And that's where I saw, that's where that came from. So he patterned his coaching style from Vince Lombardi. Vince Lombardi was a no-nonsense person, took care of his team, and was one of the first NFL coaches that had Black players on his team.
Oh, wow.
Now, here's the flip side. Let me tell you the other thing about this. Coach Sparks grew up in Western Virginia, in the Holla. So his upbringing was very, very difficult, to say the least. And he said he had 2 people in his life that saved him, his principal and his coach. And those individuals poured in him. He was a All-American quarterback, played All-American baseball, and he just brilliant guy.
Wow.
And when he came to Spotsylvania, when they merged the schools, he was 26 years old.
Wow,
26 years old. History teacher. He was a coach, and then he worked on the weekends at Sheridan Motoring as a bartender.
Wow.
But brilliant guy, just a brilliant guy.
Well, I'm sure he's proud of you. That's awesome. What an influence that he had on your life. And
he's got thousands of athletes that he's put through college, doing the same thing.
Wow. I had a similar mentor in my life as coaching, Coach Red Jenkins, who coached at W.T. Woodson High School. He coached people like Tommy Amaker, who played for Duke and is now the coach at, I think it's Harvard. But, he had a lot of influence on people. So I think when you play sports, like, I told you earlier that I played sports too. I played basketball. And so I grew up playing basketball against guys all the time. I even went to Red Jenkins basketball camp for the guys, not the girls. That's how I, got to be pretty good at basketball, like playing against tough competition. And so when I went to the Naval Academy, I too, like you, had experienced a similar situation where I was a minority. So I kind of knew. And then when you have that team environment where everyone's got a common purpose, everyone's going towards the same goal. And that's the kind of environment that leaders can create at work too, right?
Yep.
I'm sure that's how some of the things that you help leaders with in your coaching. So tell us a little bit about your book. I see the background there, Leadership,
Okay.
Overcoming Adversity with Authenticity.
Yeah, I went through some professional speaker training. And one of the things they said was, if you have a book, it kind of legitimizes what you do. And it's also a very good calling card. So I went through the training with my daughter and wanted to do it, but I never did it because it was kind of intimidating to have it grammatically flow, have somebody want to read it. And when I was diagnosed with stage 4 non-Hodgkin's lymphoma in 2010, I started writing some notes down on paper about, it was called The Blessing in the Storm. And then later on, my daughter, who is 31 now, and this was 5 years ago, she called me one day and said, "Dad, are you serious about writing your book?" And I said, "Yes." She says, "Are you committed to writing your book?" I said, "Yes." She said, "If you're committed to writing your book, I'll pay for the services up through the manuscript, and I have a young lady that I'll connect you with as a book coach." So with that, she took away all the excuses, and I got down to business, contacted the book coach, and got through it in about 4 months. I had the vision of the cover being scarlet and gold, which are the Marine Corps colors, my wings of gold, and then on the back, and also got the Mameluke sword on there also, which is the sword of a Marine officer. Then on the back, my daughter wrote the little biography. And the way I've always lived my life is things would happen. I'd say, okay, what did I learn from it? And what am I going to do differently? So that's the way the book is. And so I just started thinking about stories, times in my life, throughout my life, and what did I learn and what could I share? And that's kind of the way it's designed. And after each chapter, there's actually a page that asks you questions. What did you learn from Carl? What are you going to do differently? How are you going to apply what you learned? So it's almost like a workbook.
Oh, neat. And it ties back to what you said about how you look at situations of, what could I learn from it? And that you don't want to, experience something that somebody else already experienced. You can learn from how they experienced it. So that influenced your book clearly.
Yep.
Yeah.
And because I've had so many different opportunities, we're talking integrating the school, we're talking living in different states, we're talking about union environment, Frito Lay, Colgate Palmolive, Albany, Georgia, Marine Corps, military, aviation, nonprofits, working all those arenas, substitute teacher,
parenting.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's right. Parenting. That's a big one. Matter of fact, if I was going to write another book, that's what it would be. It would be stories about my children.
Oh, yeah.
Parenting.
Yeah, you're going to have to get their permission for that.
No.
We'll talk about parenting because that's something that you're really passionate about.
Yeah. One of the things that I believe when, different people have different definitions of success. My definition of success is to rear healthy, happy, productive adults that love the Lord, have high value, and believe in giving back. So that's my definition of, no, it's not children, it's grandchildren. So we're skipping a generation. It's grandchildren, right?
Okay.
To me, that's success. And you reach a point where, I'm at that point now. I don't have any grandkids, but I'm at that point now where one of my son is married, my daughter's not, but my opportunity to pour into the next generation is limited. So I got to make sure that I pour into them whatever they need to pour in so they can pour into the next generation. So that's the definition of success that I have, the ultimate definition of success.
Well, in some ways, I mean, I am a grandparent to a recently turned 6-year-old, and in some ways, I can say it seems to me a little easier to pour it into my grandchild than it was with my children.
I've heard that.
It's just such a different relationship. It's awesome. So look forward to that. So what advice do you have for parents? Because you said also something about being successful is you can drop your child off in New York City and they can survive.
Yeah, I always start with the end in mind. So I think that once the child leaves high school and they're not under your roof, I mean, today it's even worse because of the internet. So now once they get the phone, they're kind of
Yeah.
out of your purview. But
Yeah.
you can still see them physically. But when they leave high school and they either go to college, start working or whatever, then they need to have the tools and the skills to be able to survive on their own, not only survive, but thrive.
Hmm.
And even if they go to a college that is a quote unquote Christian college, there's still wolves in sheep's clothing, you know?
Right.
So they need to be able to, I think they need to be able to work, earn a living, be able to, know that money doesn't grow on trees.
Hmm.
Because if you make money, then you manage money. If mama's giving you money all the time, then it's, it's no big deal. So
Yeah.
being able to work, earn a living, and the other thing that working for somebody does is it lets you know that you need to be able to listen to other people. I'll give you a quick story about my son, okay? So when we talk about why is work important, okay? He worked at a company called Champs, right? And he got there, he's a natural born salesperson.
Hmm.
Within 3 weeks, he's the number one salesperson in the store. 3
Wow.
months, he's the number one salesperson in the division, right? Just great. I asked him one day, I said, Carl III, I said, Carl, how'd you get your training? Oh, I didn't get any training. I said, well, how do you do it? He told me the process. Parents come in, I find out what they want, find out what the child wants. Parent go sit down, I go makes the match, happy parent, happy son. So that's what he did. So he and his boss that hired him were in sync. He was making a lot of money, for the company. And after about 6 months, the boss changed. New boss came in. New boss is like oil and water. So
Mm.
one day my son calls me and he says, Dad, John won't let me leave. What? Let me speak to John. So I talked to John. John said, yeah, I'll let him go in a few minutes. So sure enough, shortly after that, and if you're familiar with the malls, you have the big gates that go down when they close the thing. Okay. So my son goes out, the gate goes down, and the guy says, you're fired. John says, you're fired. Turn your stuff in. You're fired. Okay. So my son calls me and tells me what happens, right? I said, okay. So what you gonna do? He
Wait,
says,
you didn't pick
well,
up the phone and call the boss and to advocate for your son?
oh no, 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 no. It was already in a toxic environment. I couldn't fix that.
And even so, you really want to teach your son to handle it, right? Hmm.
Exactly. I said, what you gonna do? So part of the issue was he was gonna get some extra hours at another store.
Mm.
And the boss that was one of the many things he was mad about. So my son says, well, I'll go down to Foot Locker and see if I can get a job there. So he went down to Foot Locker and got another job, right? So it's much easier to walk through that lesson with a 17-year-old that doesn't have any obligations
Yeah.
than a 30 or 40-year-old that's got a family
Right.
and an income and a house, and the same thing happens. So, so that's why that was a lot of lessons there in working, right?
Yeah.
Being able to work and provide for yourself, being able to do your own laundry, being able to navigate, being able to get around in the city, go to a new city, and how do you figure out how to get around? It's a little easier now because you got Uber, but then you have a map bus or whatever, some kind of way to do it. Being able to develop healthy relationships,
Mm.
being able to find a body of believers that you can worship with. All that stuff is critical when they leave your house.
Yeah. I remember when my son turned 13, he told me he wanted to be treated like an adult. And so I said, okay, you can do your own laundry from here on out. I'm not doing your laundry. That's part of being an adult.
That's, what that reminds me of? That reminds me of the 18-year-old that joins the military, joins the Marine Corps, and says, I'm leaving home because I'm tired of y'all telling me what to do.
Yeah.
So
I
joins
know,
the
I
Marine
know.
Corps.
Yeah, you'll be bossed around a lot. It's just interesting. I think, but everyone's different. My son's doing great now, but he is somebody who needs to learn naturally. And one day I was coaching, I was the coach of his basketball team. After a while, I just couldn't do that anymore. When my kids got older, I thought it was better for somebody else to be the coach. But I remember one day at home, I was trying to teach him something. He goes, "Mom, I just want to learn naturally." And he has with his life, he's not necessarily like you. I mean, he's starting to get a little bit like that where he learns from other people's, but I'm not criticizing him at all. It's just like everyone's different, right? And he has always learned naturally. So, you know.
I was looking at this documentary, and it analyzed several people. I mean, we're talking people at the very top of the sports arena. We're talking Wayne Gretzky. I think they profiled Kobe Bryant, and they profiled, who else they profiled? They profiled a wide receiver for San Francisco. I can't think of his name now. Wide receiver, great wide receiver. And one of the things that Wayne Gretzky said was, he says, I was allowed to create.
Mm-hmm.
I was allowed to create. So I'll look at it. I'll look at the Serena Williams sisters. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
The dad took them out of a system, a proven system that would get you through to the toppest level. But the dad says, no, they're not doing it that way. So he taught them very unorthodox ways to do stuff, right? Which had never been tried before.
Yeah.
Wayne Gretzky said, I had an opportunity to create, and my thing was, I want to be where the ball's supposed to be, not where it is. So it came up, and one of the things that I can't think of his, Jerry Rice, something about Jerry Rice said, I used to practice catching the ball in the dark, So all these different things. So it's a balance between learning from the best of the best and being able to create your own stuff.
That's true. That's exactly, I love that. That's right. So what are you've been through 2 near-death experiences, right? Or life challenging experiences. Maybe you can talk about that and what are some lessons that you've learned from those experiences?
Okay. When I got out of the Marine Corps, I had a physical, and in the physical, they said that you could look at the chart and see that the hearing on my right ear, the high decibel range, was constantly decreasing. So when I got out, the doctor told me that I had wax in my ears. So I get out of the Marine Corps, go to Procter & Gamble. Year 2, I have my second annual physical, and the same thing is happening, right? So I went to have a brain scan and determined that I had an acoustic neuroma, which is a tumor on the hearing nerve on the right side of my ear. Wow. It can cause your cheek to droop or you lose hearing. So they went into the right behind my ear, dug a small hole, got the tumor out, pulled the skin over, stapled it up. And so that to remove the acoustic neuroma. But during that time period, my parents came down. I was 32 at the time. My parents came down. My mother stayed with me. And that was the first time I heard my dad say that he loved me. And he showed love, but I never heard it verbalized before. So that was unique. The other thing was, military, football player, Marine Corps, you almost think like you're invincible, right?
Yeah.
When you go under the knife, you realize, you know what? I am not all that in a bag of chips.
Yeah.
And so I learned, how blessed I was, how blessed it is to have good health.
Yes.
And I can remember praying before I went under the knife, and I said, Lord, if I don't make it through this, I've lived a wonderful life. Because I look back and I said, what do I have to be grateful for? Played football at the Naval Academy, Marine Corps pilot, Procter & Gamble. I've had a lot of good experiences, So if I leave now, it's been pretty good. Not that I want to.
Yeah.
But it's all about perspective. So that was the first one. And I had a dog at the time called Chic, obedience trained dog. And we used to walk every day. And after about 2 months, the doctor said, you can go back to doing what you're doing before.
Okay.
And then in 2010, I went in for a routine colonoscopy. December 23rd, 2010, went in for a routine colonoscopy. Doctor says everything looks good. And I went to Florida with my wife to visit family. And my stomach started hurting. Couldn't lay on my stomach, couldn't lay on my back. Went back to the doctor, said, Doc, something's wrong. Did a bunch of tests. No, they gave me some pills at 2 different times and nothing helped it. Then he says, okay, I'm gonna do an x-ray of your stomach. So it does an x-ray of my stomach. And he says, I see enlarged lymph nodes in your stomach, and I'm going to refer you to an oncologist. So that was the first time I heard the C word, the
Oh,
cancer
that's a
word.
scary diagnosis.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So I had several bone marrow tests, blood tests, scan tests, PET scans to kind of figure out exactly what it was. So diagnosed me with stage 4 non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. Lymph nodes are all in your body, all over the place. And so the lymph nodes in my stomach were swollen. By the time I was diagnosed, I looked like I was 6 months pregnant, sunken in
Wow.
face, sunken in arms, sunken in legs. I looked like one of those starving kids. So I go in to see the oncologist, and there was a navigator there, and I was with my wife. And my wife starts crying, and the navigator says, Carl, you can beat this, but you have to have a positive attitude. So part of my regimen, having a positive attitude, that's the key thing. So the regimen was to have 6 rounds of chemo, 3 weeks apart. And then after that, he said originally 8 rounds. I actually had 6, and then the cancer was gone. So I was cancer free. And then there's the recovery mode. So I did a lot of walking. And during that time period when I was walking, one of the things that happens when you're going through stuff is there's a tendency to have negative things in your head.
Yeah.
And the only way I know how to remove negative is to put positive in. It's kind of like light and dark can't occupy the same space. So I got to put some light in my head, some positive stuff in my head. So I would say a verse, I would say the 23rd Psalm, or I'd say recite the Lord's Prayer or the prayer of Jabez until the negative stuff went out of my head. I could be sleeping at night, not able to sleep, and I'd keep reciting that till I went to sleep. Or I would listen to soothing music.
Yeah.
That along with, and I actually walked. I had my first chemo, and one of my neighbors was a breast cancer survivor. And she called me and she says, Carl, I want to encourage you. And I'll talk to you about what I call my chemo walk. So she developed what she called a chemo walk. She was a marathoner. And she said her chemo walk was, even though she was going through chemo, she would walk every day. So I got up for the first time after that call and walked with a neighbor, a 13-year-old neighbor in the neighborhood for a couple of blocks. And every day I used to walk.
That's
And,
awesome.
that did a lot of things. If I couldn't figure out something positive to do, I'd go walk.
Yeah, because exercise, getting outside, that can really help clear your mind as well.
Exactly.
Wow. So let's get back to you're looking at the title of your book there, and it has the word authenticity. Why is authenticity so important?
The
As a
title,
leader?
the subtitle was my daughter's idea. I
Mhm.
mean, it's true, but she came up with the tagline. I'll give her credit for the tagline.
Okay.
But it's so important. What I have found out over time is that, again, I talked about the experience with everybody having issues.
Mhm.
So most people walk around holding stuff in and not being authentic. And it's even worse now where you got Facebook and you got Instagram. Everybody's living their best life, showing the best selfies they can do. So nobody talks about the struggles, and everybody has struggles.
Yeah.
So
Everybody.
exactly. So being able to talk to people, listen to people, listen to people, empathize with them, and help them solve problems is critical. It's critical for managers. It's critical for military officers. It's critical for any leader. So
Why?
one of
But
the things
doesn't that like get in the way of getting the job done? I mean, if you as a leader have to sit and listen to somebody saying about one of their woes in life, I mean, that isn't that a waste of time? Because you've got their life, what's going on at home is going on at home, and you've got a job to do and a mission at the company.
yeah, you teeing that up for me because you can't check your outside stuff at the door. If you have had a fight with your wife or your husband and you bring it to work, it's going to affect you. If your child is on dialysis or is on drugs or what, it's going to affect you. So you can't separate it. So let's use this example. Okay, what was I going to use? I can't think of the example I was going to use. How important it was. Oh gosh, what was it?
But it's like, well, okay, I guess it's important that somebody is going through that, but that's something for them to deal with at home with a counselor. Like, why me as a leader of a company should I even get involved in that? That's going to take away a lot of my time. I got to go run the company.
Right, gotcha. Stick a note. What I was thinking about was this, and this will kind of backdoor that. So when I worked for Procter & Gamble, I'd been there for 5 years, and I was a department manager. and my boss was a woman, and she was a non-traditional woman. When I say non-traditional, she came up through the organizational development ranks. She wasn't an engineer or anything like that, and she was older, and she had adopted 3 kids of different racial backgrounds. Okay, so she's my boss. So her approach to getting stuff done was totally different than anybody else. I'm gonna give you this example that'll kind of talk a little bit about what you, it's different, but it's the same. So when we had meetings, when we had our weekly meetings, she would start the meeting off by saying, okay, let's check in and see what's going on in your life. She went around the table, right? So let's say you at that time, you just, you were struggling with something with your child.
Yeah.
Right? And you shared that in the group. The group would help you problem solve that. Okay. Now, the meeting was maybe an hour, maybe 2 hours, whatever the time was. So you're taking up time for that. And sometimes we didn't even get to the agenda. But you know what happened? The work got done because we cared about each other. The work got done. Now, the flip side is that, let's say you got a team, you got an hour meeting, you're very efficient, nobody brings anything personal in, and you go through the agenda, but it's not as productive outside of the meeting. You're going through the motions when nobody cares.
Yep. And that's so important these days with people really wanting to feel valued. And, a lot what we've learned with COVID, I think that brought a lot of us together. And some companies are embracing, continuing that culture of, being able to talk about personal stuff at work and that you bring your whole self to work. And I've seen LinkedIn change even with people's posts, being much more vulnerable and sharing challenges, not just how everything's perfect. And I used to sit at the Naval Academy in my science or math class and looking out across the Severn River and see these big houses and think, those people there, they just have a perfect life. Little did I know, that no matter how senior you are, no matter what you own or whatever, everyone experiences challenges in life. And it makes us feel connected when we can share that.
I'll tell you a quick story that kind of addresses that a little bit. So I was doing my pitch to coach for a Naval Academy Marine retiree, right? And I give my pitch, and this person started up a company that was very, very successful, making all kinds of money, right? So I give him my pitch, and he says, okay, Carl, he says, I don't want you to take this the wrong way, but how can you help me? How can you really help me? I'm retired from the Marine Corps. I've got this multi-million-dollar business, and I got all these cars. How can you help me? And this is what I said. I asked him a question. I said, what does a CEO of a Fortune 500 company have in common with the superintendent of a school system, an admiral in the Navy, okay, and an entrepreneur that's in a successful, and I said a senior pastor of a megachurch? What do they all have in common? He says, I don't know. They're very successful. I said, well, yeah. But one thing they have in common is they don't have anybody they can talk to.
That's true.
If you're a general in the Marine Corps, who are you going to talk to? You can talk to your troops. All right. If you're the Fortune 500 company, who are you going to talk to? Your people, the people on the floor. You don't have anybody to talk to, and the people that are talking to you are blowing smoke up your behind.
Yeah, they're not telling you the
they
truth.
Want to keep their job.
Yeah.
So you need somebody to speak truth into you that can help you with blind spots that you don't have.
Right.
So he bought it.
That's good. That's a really good comeback, because we all have blind spots that we can't see no matter how hard we try. And that's the value of a really good coach. Yeah, that's great. So how would you recommend that? It sounds like you've really found your purpose with what you're doing with the coaching and based on all of your experiences that you've had built up to that. I mean, how do you recommend that someone determines what their purpose is in life?
I think the first thing is you start with the end in mind, and you say, you try to envision why you're here on this earth. And if you can't get into that, then you say, okay, what do I want to get out of life?
Mhm.
I think in order to have a good conversation about that, I think you have to believe that you're not going to be here forever. So you're looking for the real end in mind. So you're saying that you're not going to be here. So long term, we're talking long term vision. What's your purpose and why are you here? I think that people are born with certain attributes, and then you learn certain skills. I think some people have natural things that they're gifted with. Hand-eye coordination might be one.
Mhm.
Math might be one. Having a brain where you can analyze stuff. And then there's some things that you learn, skills that you develop over time. I believe that one of the things that I think is important, one of the things I tried to do as a parent was to expose my kids to different things, to find out what they naturally like to do. So I
Yeah.
would have them in at least one team sport, one individual sport, and several extracurricular activities. Some type of sport is important. Some other type. My daughter was a cheerleader. She was in Girl Scouts. She worked. She ran track. She did all kinds of stuff. My son ran cross country. He had several jobs. He was in junior ROTC. They both were in junior ROTC, Air Force junior ROTC, right? But even
Okay.
at a young age, just kind of find out what they naturally do, or what doesn't seem like work to them. Like
Yeah.
my
What you
son,
just
for
love.
example.
What is
Exactly.
like, yes, I can't wait to do
Yes.
that.
Exactly. My son, for example, like I said, he was a natural born salesperson and he was in that job, right? He went to this program called Boy State, and a lot of states have it, where you have several rising seniors that go to this governmental retreat for a week and talk about politics and stuff like that. So he went to that, and part of the process was to prepare and or do impromptu speeches.
Mhm.
He came back like a new person. That was the first time in his life he ever got valued for speaking.
Wow.
Every other time it's kind of like, shut up, you talk too much.
Uh-huh.
So so that's an example. So if you can figure that out at a younger age and get them in something that they can win in, that's huge.
Yeah. That's really good advice. And then I think if you didn't learn it at a young age and you're working and you feel like you're struggling every day and not really enjoying what you're doing, sometimes we feel like, well, I just got to put up with that. I got to earn a living. I got to, this is my life. But I think that we could take a step back, take a break. Like I'm going camping this weekend, not for that purpose, but get away from technology, get away from all the noise and really think, what would I love? What is it that I love? And what changes do I want to make in my life? And a lot of times, our mind will tell us, oh, you can't change. You got to just stay the same. You got to stay for your retirement, whatever, all these things. And that's just our mind trying to keep us safe. But how do we know that switching and doing something that we love wouldn't be even better for us? So, I mean, we're only here, like you said, for a short time. Why don't we should be able to just love everything, as much as we can about our life.
Yeah. And the flip side of that too, it's always a balance. There's always a two-sided coin. So the flip
Yeah.
side of that is, I'll give give an example. There's a young man that's a bioengineer, and he got scammed on he got scammed through this process on the internet first, right? So he loses a bunch of money, right?
Mm.
Thinking he had a job, didn't have a job. Anyway, he gets another job. He gets a job now, and he said in 2 weeks he's bored. He hates it, right? Now he just left a place where he got scammed and didn't have a job. Now he hates this job. So
Right.
the trick is, even if you don't like doing it, if you have the mindset of I'm going to do the best I can and do the best I can and work not only to this person, this boss here that's dogging me out, but I'm working as I'm working towards the Lord,
Right.
and I'm gonna do some other stuff at the same time, then that's the mindset you have. Now, I talked about the different things that I had done. They weren't all, I didn't enjoy doing all of them,
Right.
and one of them I said, okay, I'm in this thing and I'm going to pivot and do something different. Now, the other thing is, again, I talk about quitters never win and winners never quit. There's a difference between quitting and
Right.
making an assessment and say, you know what, I can do this, but I choose not to.
Right. There's a difference.
Right.
Yeah. 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 Well, I've really enjoyed our interview, Carl. And maybe you can tell us your website so that people can go, and that's where they can get your book too, right?
Yes.
So,
Yeah, my website is
mhm.
carlsharpersonjr.com. That's my website. If you Google my name, I'm on social media and talks and stuff like that. So that'll pop up. And then the book can be gotten through Amazon or Barnes and Nobles and or my website. Either way, you can get the book. Easy read, a lot of nuggets in it. And if you reach out to me afterwards, I'd love to talk to you about what your thoughts are, what you learned, and how I might be able to help you.
Awesome. And they can reach out on your website, right?
Yes, ma'am. They sure
Okay.
can.
So, this show is all about, creating a life you love living. What are some final tips you have for the listeners for how they can really, love living their lives?
Okay. I'll talk about some 5 simple principles that are in my book. There are a lot of principles in it, but I'll start off with quitters never win and winners never quit. Life is going to have valleys and it's going to have seasons. The only thing you're guaranteed is change. And when you control what you can control, things you can't control, you let God control. But anyway, quitters never win and winners never quit. The other thing that's a foundational principle is always take care of your people. Always take care of the troops. Another key principle, which is Naval Academy grounded. When you messed up, you had 3 responses. At least when I was there: yes, sir; no, sir; no excuse, sir; I'll find out, sir.
Right.
So you always tell the truth.
Yeah.
That's another key principle. Another one is it's all about relationships. Nobody gets to where they are unless they stand on the shoulders of somebody else. 80% of the people get their opportunities / jobs or whatever through their network. It's not through LinkedIn. It's not through the internet. It's not through Indeed. It's through relationships, even in the military.
Yeah.
People have to pave the way for you. So it's all about relationships. And the last one for me is faith, family, and friends. When I was at my darkest spot, I had to rely on those 3 things to take me through.
Thank you so much, Carl. Those are wonderful tips. I really appreciate you being on the show today.
All righty. It's a pleasure being here.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for listening. And I look forward to the next episode next week. Talk to you later. Bye.
Onward Live is sponsored by Emily Harmon Coaching and Consulting. Visit my website, emilyharmon.com, to learn more about me and my coaching programs. I'd love to help you create a life you love living. Remember, every adversity is our own personal university. Sometimes the lessons are difficult, and we must learn from our experiences. Vulnerability is your superpower. You are lovable and worthy. And we discuss these topics and more because professional is personal. Thank you for joining us and engaging with me and my guest. I look forward to seeing you next time.